So is it going to be a great big beautiful tomorrow, or is this going to be more of the same? I get a lot of questions about a lot of things, and recently at the top of that list, second only to Disney Vacation Club, has been Josh D'Amaro. He's the new CEO of the Walt Disney Company. He just took the reins earlier this year, 2026. I want to say it was March something, mid-March 2026. And a lot of people are hopeful. A lot of people are hopeful that he is going to save us from a lot of the things that we may have not been too happy with over the past however many years. But the question that keeps getting sent my direction, the question I want to answer for you today is, what are my thoughts? Is Josh D'Amaro going to be the answer? Is it going to be a great, big, beautiful tomorrow? Or is this going to be more of the same? Now, of course, it has been a bit since Josh D'Amaro has taken the reins. He's been doing things, and, by the time you sit down and have this conversation with me today, you probably have opinions now that you may or may not have had when he first took the position of CEO. And who knows, maybe he'll make some adjustments in the future or do something in the future that'll have us changing our opinion yet again. But still, currently, I'm not as optimistic as some people are about Josh D'Amaro taking over as CEO. Certainly not as optimistic as people were when we first found out that it was going to be him taking over. So I'm going to get into some thoughts on why that is for me, but before I do, we got a disclaimer. I'm not being negative, I'm just being honest. I'm sharing my thoughts and opinions. If you want someone to just tell you everything from a rose-colored perspective, there are so many other channels out there. Go find one of them. Pretending that an experience is something that it's not, or a situation is something that it's not, and trying to convince you of that has never been my style. So if that's what you're looking for, and it landed you here, you've made a wrong turn. But all right, so what are my thoughts on Josh D'Amaro? What are my thoughts on the future of the Walt Disney Company now that he's the CEO? And more importantly, do I think he's going to be the answer to all of those questions that I mentioned a little bit earlier? Is he going to save us from all of these issues like high prices, the problems with the disability access service, Lightning Lane, and alike? As soon as I found out that Josh D'Amaro was going to be the newest CEO of the Walt Disney Company, I, like so many of you, presumably, was pretty excited. Not that I was excited for Josh D'Amaro in particular, I'm aware of who he is, I'm aware of what he has been responsible for in the past, and I've built my opinions on him based on that, which we'll get more into here in a bit. But more so, I was just excited for some sort of change. A change of pace from the era of the Bobs, as I like to call it, that we all kind of suffered through, at very least in the past 5 years alone. Especially right there toward the end, the Chapek to Iger switcheroo that we got, and everything that came or didn't come out of that moment. I was done with it and very ready for a change. And Josh D'Amaro is a change. There's no getting around that. First of all, his name's not Bob. Seems like a good place to start. But also a lot of people have some very strong and positive opinions of him, which I think is fantastic. But where all of this started to become really interesting, for me at very least, is what people were hoping to get out of Josh D'Amaro as the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, specifically when it comes to what's going on at the theme parks. Because of course, once he took the reins of the company, people started to get kind of specific. And I got questions about this. People asking if I thought he was going to, make changes to DAS, if I thought that this was going to be a moment where we were going to see prices go down finally. The elimination of Lightning Lane multipass and single pass, hopefully the return of a free fast pass option. And for me, if I'm being completely honest, this is where I started to get a little bit confused. Because while I'm very well aware that Disney fans are a incredibly optimistic bunch, there also seemed to be a lot of people who were claiming to be familiar with Josh D'Amaro while simultaneously hoping that he was going to change things that, quite frankly, he was responsible for, and in many cases championed. Things like the changes to Disney's disability access service, things like having a paid Lightning Lane option, having park pass reservation system in place, not to mention price increases that made things like his biggest achievement, this $60 billion investment in Disney parks and experiences possible. And I started to do a little bit more research and kind of get a little bit more granular with all of the things that he has done, what he has been responsible for specifically at the Disney parks. And I got even more confused as to why people thought he would be the answer to all of these problems. And if I'm being completely honest with you, I still am kind of confused. I mean, I know that, again, Disney fans are optimistic, and they do this thing. Disney fans are kind of unique in this way, that they like to find the one person that they're going to point at, and they make that person responsible for every decision. In the most recent case, related to this discussion, it's Iger. People are pissed at Iger, and he's the one who's responsible for all of this. And it makes sense because being the CEO, he is at the top, and what he wants to do with the company can trickle down. Like, I get that. Don't get me wrong. But also there are other executives, there are other heads that are responsible for different sections of the company. And Josh D'Amaro has been one of those executives. He's not someone who's new here. He's not only been with the Walt Disney Company for, I want to say, like 30 years, but he's also been working in this very area, currently called Disney Experiences. Previously it was like Walt Disney Parks and Experiences. For a minute, he's been able to leave his mark. He's been able to tell us what it is he stands for and what it is he wants to do with this section of the company, because he's been responsible for this section of the company. Now, does that mean that he can't change his mind? He can't change his tune? He can't make a change that goes against something that he's done before? Absolutely not, right? Like, that is very possible. But I also think that it's like super optimistic, kind of leaning toward delusional, to assume that the person who created the situation we feel like we need to be saved from is going to save us. Impossible? No. But let's be real, it's probably not going to happen. I don't really think that Josh D'Amaro is going to be the mover and the shaker that people hope, even as the CEO. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there who are like, well, he hasn't even had enough time to get his feet firmly planted. But again, he's not new with the company. He's not new when it comes to this. It's not like he's never made his mark before. And even so, only however many months in, he has already made some changes. It can take years before we see real big changes. I understand that. Most of you understand that as well. But you guys have asked the question. I'm going to answer it. And my answer is, I don't think that he's going to be making the changes that some people are hoping to see at the Disney parks. Certainly not when it comes to things like pricing. I mean, yeah, he might be the CEO, but he still has shareholders to answer to, and those shareholders want a return on their investment. But I'm also not convinced. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for. I'm not a believer that Josh D'Amaro in and of himself is going to be the one and only person to usher Disney parks specifically into a new era. Will he play a role? Most definitely. But so too will the new leadership of Disney Parks and Experiences, or Disney Experiences as it's now called. I personally don't know the name of that person. I don't know who it is, or what their background is with the company. So who knows what that'll look like? Who knows what those people will champion, what changes they'll make, what they'll advise Josh D'Amaro on, and he'll provide his guidance on, and what that'll look like when you put all that together. We'll just have to wait and see. But what I do know for sure is that if we're going to give D'Amaro credit for the things that he has done at Disney parks that we have liked, and be like, yeah, wow, look what he did while he was here, then we so too have to give credit to the next people coming in and taking that role, because they have the same amount of pull in that role that D'Amaro would have had. Does that make sense? And to that same point, if we're going to credit Iger with the problems that D'Amaro also played a big role in because he was the CEO, we have to prepare to credit D'Amaro for any shit shows that happen as a result of the new leadership that is taking the place at Disney Experiences, which is a tough pill to swallow. It's a huge problem. Anytime we have conversations like this, when it centers around the Walt Disney Company, people want to find their villain. And let's be real, sometimes that villain starts out as the hero. We never want to admit it after the fact, but it's true. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm optimistic. I'm hoping for the best with this change in leadership over at the Walt Disney Company. I'm hoping that Josh D'Amaro, has a successful run as the CEO, but I'm also hoping that the people who have taken his place are just as successful, that their ideas move us in the right direction just as much as Josh D'Amaro as the CEO might. Whether or not that'll happen, what that'll look like in the future, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But at the end of the day, I'm optimistic. I'm hoping for the best. I'm not holding my breath, you know? And like I said, when we kicked this off, I'm not pretending that this situation is anything that it isn't. And quite frankly, I don't think you should either. And I don't say that for any reason other than when we pretend that something is something it's not, we can't get the change that we actually need. And I think that that's honestly the biggest problem at Disney Parks right now. There are too many people too invested in the fantasy that the reality is not being addressed. So, but yeah, with that, let me wrap this up by asking you the same questions that have been asked to me. What are your thoughts on Josh D'Amaro and him taking on the role of CEO at the Walt Disney Company? What do you think he's going to do in order to improve the experience? Do you think he's going to improve the experience at all? And what are your thoughts on the new leadership in the Disney Experiences role? That's the person responsible for Disney Theme Parks, Cruise Line, Disney Vacation Club. Let me know your thoughts in a comment down below. Of course, keep it kind. I can't believe I have to say that, but every single time we have a conversation about something like this, some of you forget how to be grown-ups, so that's your reminder. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say, so pop it in the comments. And until next time, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, guys.